Human retrieves alien girl from a frozen shuttle, but human finds his jacket already on her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The frozen plains of Eris. 9 stretched endlessly beneath Ethan Cole's rescue skiff, a white-blue desert where the air shimmered with drifting ice crystals that hissed softly against the hull. His visor read -76 degrees Fahrenheit, wind speed 45 miles per hour, surface visibility barely half a mile. The whole moon felt like a graveyard locked inside a snow globe someone kept shaking. Ethan nudged the controls with gloved fingers stiff from cold despite the heating coils humming under the suit. A derelict shuttle had been spotted by long-range scans. No ID, no distress beacon, just a faint metallic signature half buried under packed ice. He was supposed to retrieve salvageable components, tag the rest, and get home before the next ion storm rolled in. Simple, quick, clean. He muttered to himself, breath fogging the inside of his visor. Could have gone better if I hadn't dropped my damn thermal jacket on the ramp. He'd meant to go back for it. He didn't. And now the wind bit through his undersuit like needles of dry frost. His boots crunched across the ice as he stepped out, the ground groaning faintly beneath him as if warning him not to linger. The shuttle rose from the snow like a frozen fossil, hull enamel cracked and glazed over, its entry door sealed by a thick rind of ice that glittered under the pale starlight. His scanner pinged once, soft, uncertain. A life sign. Very faint. Ethan paused, heartbeat tapping faster in his ears. There wasn't supposed to be anyone alive out here. Still, he forced the cutter into the ice, watching white shards scatter across his boots. The hatch finally gave with a low metal sigh, warm air from his suit spilling into the darkness inside. His helmet lamp cut a narrow beam across the ruined cabin. Seats twisted, frost clinging to broken straps, panels sagging from the ceiling like wilted leaves. Then the beam stopped. A figure lay slumped against the far bulkhead. A girl, slender, unmoving, her skin a muted blue-green beneath the shimmer of frost. Her breathing was shallow, a fragile wisp rising and falling almost imperceptibly. Ethan moved closer, slow, cautious. She didn't look injured, just frozen, drained, fighting for whatever warmth her body could cling to. But what stopped him cold wasn't her face, or the way her silver-tinted hair had stiffened into thin, icy strands. It was the jacket wrapped tightly around her. His jacket, black, thermal-lined, with the exact tear across the right shoulder where he'd snagged it last week on a loose bolt. His name patch still clung crookedly to the chest. Cole. Ethan stared, confusion prickling through the cold haze fogging his thoughts. He whispered to no one, "How the hell?" The girl stirred weakly, her fingers tightening around the collar of the jacket as if she knew it was hers, had always been hers. Ethan swallowed, crouching beside her, the cold biting sharper now, the question burning hotter. How did a stranger in a dead shuttle get hold of something he'd lost only an hour ago? Snow swirled through the open hatch as if urging him to decide. Ethan exhaled, slow, steady, and reached for her, knowing whatever answer waited, it wasn't staying frozen in this tomb of metal and ice. Ethan slid his arms under the alien girl with careful steadiness, feeling the faint warmth radiating through the thermal jacket that should not have been there. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder, her breathing shallow but rhythmic, a fragile reminder that time on this frozen moon was not his ally. The wind outside thickened with drifting ice dust, tapping gently against his visor, as if warning him to move faster. He stepped out of the ruined shuttle, the metal beneath his boots groaning softly, and crossed the short distance back toward his rescue skiff. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of her weight, but because of the impossible question echoing through him. He had lost this jacket an hour ago. She had it before he even touched the shuttle door. His suit chimed a soft alert as the temperature dropped another few degrees. He quickened his pace, reaching the skiff's boarding ramp just as a fresh gust of cold air swept across the plains, carrying thin crystals that glimmered like dusted glass. Inside the small cabin, Warmth hummed from the environmental regulator. Ethan placed her carefully onto the padded bunk along the right wall. The interior lights reflected off her skin, revealing subtle iridescent undertones beneath the blue-green surface, like the sheen of a seashell held under moonlight. Her eyelashes fluttered once, but did not fully open. Ethan knelt beside her and adjusted a warming pad along her arms. He spoke softly, unsure if she could hear him through the haze of cold. "You are all right now. You are safe here. Just hold on." Her fingers, still curled around the jacket collar, did not relax. It was as if she was holding on to it not for warmth, but for memory. Ethan tapped the scan panel beside the bunk. The screen displayed vital signs that were faint but climbing. Body temperature slowly rising. Heart rate stabilizing. Oxygen saturation improving. The ship gently vibrated as the engines compensated for increasing winds outside. He steadied himself with a hand on the wall. A soft hiss drew his attention. The girl shifted, her eyes opening just a sliver, revealing a pale silver color that caught the cabin lights like reflective metal. She looked at him as though she recognized him, not in a confused or frightened way, but with a strange familiarity, as if she had seen him before under different circumstances. Ethan froze for a heartbeat, trying to read that quiet expression. Her lips parted slightly. The words came out faint, nearly swallowed by the soft hum of the engines. "You found me again." Ethan blinked, unsure whether he had heard her correctly or if exhaustion and cold were playing tricks on him. "Again," he echoed quietly. She nodded almost imperceptibly before her eyes closed once more. He leaned back, exhaling slowly, his breath steady but his thoughts spinning. He touched the torn shoulder seam of the jacket, still wrapped around her. The tear matched his exactly. Same place, same shape, same frayed edges. There was no mistake. It was his. Yet he had not put it on her. He had not even been inside the shuttle until minutes ago. Outside, the wind rose into a hollow whistle against the hull. Ethan stood, checking the radar screen on the control panel. A weak magnetic storm began to bloom on the horizon, pale tendrils curling across the sensors. He would need to take off soon. But the girl on the bunk stirred again, her hand slipping from the jacket collar to rest by her side. Ethan stepped closer, drawn by something more than duty. Something quiet. Something human. He spoke in a low voice that filled the small cabin with a steady warmth. "Whoever helped you the first time, it was not me. But I am here now, and I am not leaving without you." The radar pulsed once more, the storm expanding. Ethan took the pilot's seat, fingers hovering over the ignition controls, eyes flicking to the bunk where the girl rested under his impossible jacket. He did not know what had happened on this moon before he arrived, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever strange thread had tied their fates together, it had already begun to pull tighter. The skiff lifted from the ice with a low vibrating hum, its stabilizers pushing against the rising magnetic storm as faint streaks of pale green energy rippled across the horizon. Ethan kept one hand on the throttle, the other steady on the manual controls. The autopilot flickered twice and then disabled itself with a soft chime, warning that field interference was too high for automated flight. He muttered under his breath, adjusting the altitude trim, his gaze shifting briefly toward the bunk. The girl remained wrapped in his jacket, her breathing deeper now, no longer shallow gasps of cold. A faint glow shimmered beneath her skin, subtle and rhythmic, as if responding to the ship's steady warmth. She looked peaceful, almost like someone who had finally reached a destination she had been trying to find for a long time. Ethan kept his voice low, talking partly to her and partly to the humming cockpit around him. "You said I found you again. That means something. I just do not know what yet." The storm bent the clouds into long, swirling ribbons as the skiff ascended. Static danced across the glass canopy in thin white lines. His radar blinked a weak outline of the rescue station in the distance, still several miles away. Winds at this altitude were calmer, brushing against the hull with soft, hollow pulses. The quiet inside the cabin felt heavier, but not uncomfortable. Ethan tapped a few controls, switching to auxiliary power to preserve the main battery. The lights dimmed to a warmer hue, revealing the delicate frost still clinging to the cuffs of the jacket around her. It had melted almost everywhere else. Except there. Her fingers moved slightly, brushing the fabric as though confirming it was still with her. Ethan glanced again, then looked back to the controls, unsure why that small movement settled something in him. She was alive, present, here because he chose not to leave. A soft sound broke the silence. Her voice, barely above a whisper. Where are we going? Ethan turned slightly in his seat. A rescue outpost. It is warm, safe, and has medical support. You need time to recover. Her eyes opened a little, unfocused at first, then clearer as they traced the cabin ceiling. You are taking me with you. It was not a question. It was a realization. Ethan nodded once. Yes, of course I am. She watched him quietly, studying the way he adjusted the controls, the way he leaned forward when the storm tugged at the stabilizers, the unspoken determination in each subtle movement. You were not the one who found me before, she said, her voice steadier now. But you feel the same. Ethan frowned lightly. Feel the same how? Her gaze softened slightly. You carry the same warmth. He blinked, unsure how to respond. The sensors crackled, pulling his attention. Another burst of interference swept across the sky, sending tiny arcs of light dancing across the skiff's nose. Ethan tightened his grip on the controls, lowering the craft a few hundred feet to escape the densest part of the field. The girl watched him quietly, her silver eyes reflecting the soft lights of the cabin. You risked a great deal, she said. It sounded less like a comment and more like she was trying to understand something important. Ethan answered simply. You were breathing. That was all I needed to know. She let that settle between them, her fingers gently brushing the torn shoulder seam of the jacket again. Then, in a tone barely carried above the hum of the engines, she murmured, You learned faster this time. Ethan felt a chill unrelated to the cold outside. He turned to look at her fully, but her eyes had drifted closed again, as if the effort of speaking had been enough. He exhaled, steadying both his breathing and the skiff as the outpost beacon finally flashed on the horizon, a warm golden pulse cutting through the swirling storm. Whatever mystery surrounded her, whatever impossible thread tied their paths together, he knew one thing clearly through the haze of confusion. The moment he lifted her from that frozen shuttle, the timeline he thought he understood began to shift. The outpost grew larger through the cockpit glass, a cluster of warm amber lights rising from the icy ground like a beacon built to defy the cold. Ethan guided the skiff lower, skimming the surface where the winds softened and the air carried the faint static of the passing storm. He felt the gentle shift in gravity as the landing gears extended with a soft mechanical click. The girl stirred slightly when the skiff touched down, the vibration traveling through the bunk. Ethan powered down the engines, letting the hum fade into the muted quiet of the storm walls outside. He stood and moved toward her, feeling the heat panels warm the soles of his boots. Her eyes opened halfway, silver and calm, following his movement as though she had been waiting for him to stand. We made it, Ethan said gently. She blinked once, slow and deliberate, her breathing steady now. The warmth of the cabin had brought a light flush to her cheeks, a soft contrast to her blue-green skin. He reached out a hand to help her sit up, but she clutched the jacket a little tighter and made an effort to rise on her own. Her movements were careful, slightly unsteady, like someone returning to a body that still remembered the cold. Ethan stepped back just enough to give her space, while still staying close in case she faltered. She glanced around the skiff interior, taking in the metal walls, the dim amber lighting, the soft thrum of the remaining power cells. Her voice was quiet but clearer than before. This place feels different. Ethan nodded. Safer than the shuttle. And warmer. She let out a soft breath that might have been agreement. The cabin lights flickered briefly as the external storm brushed against the shielding. Ethan turned toward the hatch, unlocking the seals. The door slid open, allowing a gentle wave of cold air to mix with the warmer interior. Snowflakes drifted in, tiny crystalline specks glinting under the cabin lights. He looked over his shoulder. I can carry you if you need. She shook her head, small but firm. I can walk. She slid her legs over the edge of the bunk, her bare feet touching the warmed floor plates. For a moment she remained still, testing her balance. Ethan watched, hands ready but not extended. She pushed herself upright slowly, the jacket still wrapped around her shoulders, brushing against her calves as she stood. She wobbled once, and Ethan instinctively stepped forward, but she steadied herself before he reached her. Her expression held a quiet determination. I remember this, she murmured. Ethan tilted his head. Remember what? She looked at him, eyes reflecting the soft cabin light. You offering to help, and me trying to walk anyway. Ethan felt a strange pull in his chest, a mixture of confusion and something else he did not have a name for. That did not happen, he said softly. Not with me. She held his gaze a moment longer, as if weighing something. Not with this you, she corrected gently. He did not know how to respond. The way she said it felt unsettling and comforting all at once, as if she understood more than she should. A gust of wind swept against the skiff, reminding him that they were still exposed. Ethan extended his arm toward the hatch. Let us get inside the outpost. You can explain more there. She nodded and took a careful step forward. Ethan matched her pace as they descended the ramp, the snow crunching softly under their feet. The lights of the outpost cast long shadows across the icy ground, stretching toward them like welcoming hands. As they walked, she leaned slightly closer to him, not out of fear, but as if drawn by something familiar, something she trusted even if she did not understand it fully. Ethan glanced down at her, at the jacket wrapped around her shoulders, at the quiet steadiness in her stride. Whatever had connected them before he ever reached that frozen shuttle, it was still here, walking beside him in the crisp, glowing snow. The door of the outpost slid open with a warm hiss, inviting them into a space untouched by the storm. And as they stepped inside together, Ethan felt the quiet certainty that this moment, simple as it looked, was the true beginning of everything he did not yet understand. Warm air enveloped them the moment the outpost doors sealed, replacing the muffled howl of the storm with a soft mechanical hum. The lighting inside was low and amber, casting long, gentle shadows across the narrow hallway. Ethan guided the girl forward, matching her measured steps as she adjusted to the stable ground beneath her. Her bare feet pressed against the heated floor panels, and a faint shiver ran through her body, not from cold, but from the sudden shift into safety. She looked around with quiet curiosity, taking in the smooth metallic walls and the soft hum of generators cycling beneath the floor. This place is alive, she whispered. Ethan glanced at her with a small nod. It keeps the storm out. That is enough. They reached the small med bay at the end of the hall. The door slid open, revealing a compact room lit by a single overhead lamp that cast a warm glow across the soft gray surfaces. The diagnostic chair sat in the center, surrounded by simple monitoring equipment. Nothing advanced. Nothing intrusive. Ethan helped her sit, though she insisted on lowering herself into the chair under her own strength. The jacket, his jacket, remained wrapped around her like a shield she was unwilling to part with. He activated the medical interface. A soft blue skin traveled across her form, gentle and non-invasive. The screen showed slightly elevated core temperature, improved pulse, and signs of mild cellular stress from prolonged cold exposure, but nothing critical. She watched the scan with calm curiosity, her silver eyes following each flicker of data. Your technology is simple, she observed softly, but kind. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Kind. She nodded. It asks before it touches. It waits. It lets life lead. Ethan was not sure what to say to that. He cleared his throat and checked the readings again just to keep his hands busy. You will recover fully, he said. You just need rest. She studied him in silence, as though his words carried something deeper. Then she looked down at her fingers resting on the fabric of the jacket. You cared for me before, she murmured. The first time. Ethan leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely. I do not know what you remember, but I promise you, before today, we never met. Her gaze lifted to his, steady and unblinking. Time is not always one line, she said, her voice soft but certain. Sometimes it folds. Sometimes it echoes. Sometimes it gives someone a second chance. Ethan felt the weight of her words settle in the quiet room. A second chance for what? She hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. To do what you wanted to do the first time. Ethan almost spoke, but she continued before he could. You reached for me once. I remember your hands. I remember the warmth leaving you as you tried to keep me alive. I remember you fading. A faint tremor touched her voice, but it was not fear. It was recognition. Ethan's pulse thudded softly in his ears. That was not me, he said quietly. Not this version of me. Whoever you saw, it was someone else. Not someone else, she said gently. Just you, before time moved differently. A soft tone chimed from the monitors, signaling stabilized vitals. The room returned to its calm hum. as if accepting her words without question. Ethan stepped closer, kneeling so he could meet her eyes without towering over her. "Why would I go to you?" he asked. "Why would I risk that much?" She looked at him with a softness that felt older than her voice. "Because you cared," she said simply. "And because I cared back, even if you did not know it yet." Ethan felt the breath leave him in a quiet exhale. She rested her hand lightly against the jacket's torn shoulder seam, tracing the frayed edge with a tenderness that did not belong to a stranger. "This time," she whispered, "you made it in time." Outside, the storm's distant rumble softened, as if the moon itself paused to listen. And in the warm glow of that small med bay, Ethan realized the question was no longer how she had gotten his jacket. The real question was what he had already done, somewhere in a fractured fold of time, to earn the trust in her eyes now. The medbay lights settled into a steady amber glow, casting soft reflections across the metallic walls. Ethan adjusted the monitor beside the girl, though everything on the screen already showed improvement. He was doing it more to steady his own thoughts than to change anything. She sat quietly, her posture relaxed yet alert, as if every hum of the outpost and every faint pulse of the storm outside told her something he could not hear. The jacket still wrapped around her shoulders seemed to ground her, its dark fabric a strange contrast against her blue-green skin. When the warmth finally reached her fingertips, she flexed them gently, watching the movement with a certain wonder. "Cold takes memories," she said softly, "but warmth brings them back." Ethan leaned against the counter, arms crossed, trying to understand her words without interrupting the fragile calm that had settled between them. "What memories?" he asked. She lifted her gaze to him, silver eyes steady and luminous. "You. Not exactly you, but the way you chose." Ethan exhaled slowly. "I do not even know what choice I made." "You chose not to leave," she answered simply, "even when everything around you said you should." Her words settled into the quiet room like a slow drop of water into stillness. Ethan felt a strange heaviness behind his ribs, not burdened, but aware. He rubbed the back of his neck, searching for a grounding thought. "Look," he said gently, "I want to understand. But I am just a rescue tech who found you in a frozen shuttle. I do not know anything about timelines or folds or echoes." She tilted her head slightly, studying him with a calm interest. "Your people see time as a road," she said. "Straight. Predictable. One direction." Ethan nodded. "That sounds about right." "Mine see time as a landscape," she continued. "It has ridges and valleys and sudden drops. Sometimes paths cross twice. Sometimes they cross before they ever meet." Ethan blinked once, processing the idea slowly, letting it sink past his practical instincts. "Are you saying I crossed your path after I saved you? Or before?" "Both," she whispered. "And neither. You were there when I needed you, and now time has allowed you to be here again." She paused, her fingers brushing the seam of the jacket. "But this time, you lived." Ethan felt the temperature in the room shift, not physically, but in the weight of her words. He stepped closer without thinking, stopping just a few inches from her. "If I did something that cost me my life," he said quietly, "why would I do it?" She raised her eyes to his, her expression soft, not sorrowful, but full of a meaning he could not decipher yet. "Because you could not bear to let someone fade alone." Her voice was steady, almost like she was reminding him of a truth rather than revealing a secret. Ethan felt the walls of the med bay press inward around the moment, as though the outpost itself was holding its breath. Before he could respond, the lights flickered, dimming for a brief second before returning to normal. The storm outside brushed against the shielding like a muffled whisper. The girl looked toward the door, sensing something beyond the metal frame. "The fold is not finished," she murmured. Ethan straightened. "What does that mean?" She turned her gaze back to him, her expression calm but certain, as if the truth was finally catching up to this version of her story. "It means the part of time where you saved me once is trying to reach you again." Ethan stared at her, the hum of the outpost suddenly louder in his ears. The jacket around her shoulders shifted as she drew in a slow breath. "And when it reaches you," she said softly, "you will understand why I never forgot you, even before you ever found me." The outpost lights dimmed again, this time lingering in the low glow as if something pressed gently against the walls from the outside. Ethan felt the shift before he heard anything, a soft pressure in the air like the moment before a storm touches ground. The girl lifted her head, silver eyes narrowing with quiet recognition. She was listening to something he could not hear. "It is close," she whispered. "The fold is brushing against this moment." Ethan stepped toward the control panel beside the medbay door, tapping the interface. The system showed no breach, no storm surge, no measurable anomaly. Yet the air carried a faint hum that did not belong to any generator. "I do not see anything," he said. "Sensors will not," she replied gently. "This is not outside the building. It is outside the moment." Ethan turned slowly to look at her. She was sitting upright now, legs draped over the side of the bed, jacket held around her like a memory she refused to release. "What exactly is happening?" he asked. She lowered her gaze, her fingers brushing the torn seam of the sleeve. "Time tries to finish what it started. The moment where you reached for me, it was not complete. There is still an echo of it looking for you." Ethan felt a subtle chill move across his arms. "Why me?" She looked up again. "Because you were the one who changed the moment. You went into the rupture instead of away from it." His breath caught. "Are you saying I stepped into some kind of time fracture?" She nodded once. "You stepped into a moment you were not meant to survive. But time decided you needed another chance." The hum in the air grew slightly stronger, a soft ripple across the floor. Ethan glanced instinctively toward the hallway. For a second, the lights flickered, not from power loss, but from something passing through the edges of the present. The girl stood slowly, steadying herself with a soft intake of breath. Ethan moved toward her on instinct, ready to support her if needed. She did not resist his closeness. "If something is coming," he said softly, "I will not let it take you." She shook her head gently. "It is not coming for me, Ethan." Her eyes lifted to meet his, calm and luminous. "It is coming for you." He froze. "Why?" "Because you never walked out of the fold," she said softly. "Not completely. Part of you stayed behind to save me. And now that part is reaching forward to finish what it began." Ethan felt his pulse rise in a slow, steady thrum. The hum in the room softened again, shifting almost like a heartbeat echoing through thin walls. The girl stepped closer, so close he could feel the gentle warmth radiating through the jacket. "You do not need to be afraid," she whispered. "That other you." He was not afraid. He only wanted to keep me warm, even when the cold took his strength. Ethan swallowed, his voice barely above a breath. "Did he hold you?" Her expression softened, touched with something quiet and deep. "He held me the way someone holds a fading light," she said. With everything he had left. Ethan looked at her, feeling something inside him shift, a quiet ache threaded with recognition he could not explain. The hum grew again, stronger this time, vibrating lightly through the floor. The medbay lights flickered in a pattern, dim bright dim, as if responding to a pulse from somewhere just beyond sight. The girl reached for his hand, her touch light, grounding. "When the fold finds you," she whispered, "you will remember why you chose me before you ever knew who I was." Ethan stood still, her hand warm against his, the room vibrating with an approaching moment he could not yet see. The hum steadied into a single, gentle tone, as if time itself was taking a slow breath. And Ethan understood, without knowing how, that the moment he had once died for was coming back to greet him. The tone in the air deepened, resonating through the med bay like a slow vibration traveling through metal rather than sound. Ethan felt it in his chest, a gentle push against his heartbeat, as if something was trying to match its rhythm. The girl tightened her hold on his hand, steady but not afraid. Her silver eyes reflected the shifting light above them, each flicker marking the arrival of something unseen but certain. "It is here," she murmured. Ethan looked around the room, but nothing moved. The equipment remained still. The monitors continued their soft hum. Yet the air felt different, slightly thicker, like a warm breath passing through the edges of the present. The temperature did not change, but the feeling of the space did. The girl stepped closer until she stood just a breath away from him. "You are feeling the moment you left behind," she said softly. "It is reaching for you in the only way time can." Ethan swallowed lightly. "What does it want?" She looked at him with quiet, knowing calm. "It wants you to remember." His pulse quickened, not from fear but from the sensation building inside him. A flicker of warmth touched the edge of his vision, like a faint glow just past the corner of the medbay. He turned, and for an instant he saw something. A figure. A silhouette. A person kneeling beside someone wrapped in a jacket. His jacket. The girl inhaled sharply, not in alarm, but in recognition. Ethan blinked, and the vision slipped away, leaving only the soft hum again. "That was you," she whispered. Ethan shook his head slowly. It felt familiar. The lights flickered bright dim again, but this time, the pattern formed a steady rhythm, as if syncing with something unseen. The girl raised her free hand, and the hum responded to her movement with a gentle shift, almost like a tide pulling back before returning. "Your people measure time with clocks," she said softly. "Mine measure it with echoes. You are standing in one now." Ethan looked down at her hand intertwined with his, then up at her face. "Tell me," he said quietly. "Tell me what I did." She looked at him with a tenderness that made the room feel smaller, safer. "You came to me when everything around us was breaking. The rupture pulled us into a place between moments. Cold, still, almost silent. I could not move. I could barely breathe. You should have left, Ethan." She brushed her thumb lightly against the jacket seam. "But you wrapped this around me. You stayed close. You gave me all the warmth you had left." Ethan felt a tightness form in his chest, subtle but real. "Did I say anything?" She nodded once. "You said, I am not leaving you here. Not in this cold." Her voice softened, cracking just a fraction. "And when your strength faded, you kept holding on, as if that would convince the moment not to take you." Ethan exhaled slowly, steadying himself. "But it did." "Yes," she whispered. "The cold took you. But the moment did not let you go. It folded, trying to rewind itself, trying to give you a chance to finish what you started without losing your life." Ethan glanced toward the corner where he had seen the silhouette. A faint shimmer appeared again, soft and gold, like the glow of a candle seen through frosted glass. The girl stepped closer to him, her voice warm and certain. "You are not being haunted by the past, Ethan. You are being given a chance to return to it without dying for it." Ethan felt the memory inside the glow. A man who looked like him, holding someone who looked like her in a cold that no warmth could fight. He whispered, "I remember holding someone." She nodded gently. "You held me." The glow brightened, stretching subtly along the wall, as if it were a doorway forming not into space, but into a moment. Ethan felt no fear, only a rising certainty he could not explain. The girl looked at him, her silver eyes steady. "If you step into this," she said, "you will finally understand the first time you found me." Ethan tightened his hand around hers. "Will I lose myself?" She shook her head softly. "No. You will find the part of you that never stopped trying to reach me." The glow warmed, expanding slightly, inviting but not pulling. Ethan took a slow breath, the hum settling into a heartbeat-like rhythm. Around them, and with the girl's hand held firmly in his, he stepped toward the moment waiting for him. The glow opened around them like a curtain of warm light, soft and silent, and Ethan felt the floor shift beneath his feet without any sense of falling. The med bay faded into a muted haze, replaced by a cold air that did not sting, but carried a stillness he recognized from the girl's memories. He stood inside the fractured moment, a space suspended between breaths, where time did not move forward or backward but simply waited. Snowflakes hung in the air without falling. The dim light shimmered like frozen starlight. And in the middle of it, Ethan saw himself. His other self knelt in the snow beside the girl, his movements slow and weak as he wrapped the jacket around her with trembling hands. His breath formed soft clouds, but each exhale was smaller than the last. The girl beside Ethan tightened her grip on his hand, but she did not step forward. This was not a moment to interrupt. This was a moment to witness. Ethan watched his other self draw her closer, pressing warmth into her chilled body, his face pale but determined. There was no fear in his expression, only a quiet certainty, as if he had already accepted the cost of keeping her alive. The girl beside Ethan whispered softly, "He saved me with the last of his warmth. He would have given me his last breath if he could." Ethan felt a deep ache settle in his chest, watching the other him lean closer, gently brushing frost from her cheek. His voice, faint and fading, drifted through the suspended air. "I am not leaving you here. Not in this cold." Hearing his own words spoken in another version of his voice sent a shiver through him, not of fear, but of recognition. The girl's eyes softened with memory. "When you said that, the moment changed. Time tried to take you, but your choice stayed behind like a lantern. That is what pulled me back. That is what pulled you here now." The frozen version of himself gently rested his forehead against hers, his breathing shallow, his body growing still. The cold was taking him, but even then, he held her as if warmth could be willed into existence by determination alone. Ethan stepped forward, feeling the fold respond to him. The glow deepened, washing softly over the scene. He knelt beside his other self, placing a steady hand on the fading version of him. The contact did not disturb the moment. Instead, it caused the figure to dissolve into a soft golden shimmer, as if the memory recognized that its purpose was complete. The jacket remained around the girl in the snow, a symbol of the life he had almost lost and the life he had chosen to save. When the shimmer cleared, Ethan was no longer kneeling beside the fading version of himself. He was kneeling beside her, the present her, on the same quiet snow, though now the cold did not pierce and the air did not bite. Ethan lifted the edge of the jacket gently, adjusting it around her just as his other self had done. The act felt natural, like completing a motion he had started long before he understood it. She looked at him, her silver eyes warm and steady. "You finished the moment," she whispered. "Now time can move forward." The glow began to gather around them, swirling like golden frost, pulling them back to the outpost. The frozen snow faded, replaced by the warm amber light of the medbay returning around them. Ethan still knelt before her, his hand resting lightly on the jacket's collar. She reached up, placing her hand over his. "You did not lose your life for me this time," she murmured. "You chose to live with the memory instead." He held her gaze, the quiet stillness settling between them like a breath they shared. "I did not want to leave you," he said softly. "Not then. Not now." Her eyes shimmered, reflecting the warm lights above them. "Then we step into the next moment together," she said. Ethan rose slowly, helping her stand, their hands still joined. The outpost hummed steadily, no flicker, no echo, no fracture in the air. Time felt whole again, and as they stood facing each other, the golden glow faded completely, leaving only the steady warmth of the room and the quiet truth resting in her voice. "This time," she whispered, "you chose to stay."